Hey guys, it's the Xenoblade 5, and I present you a question. Do fairies have tails? Nobody knows. Thus, it is a never-ending mystery, and so a never-ending adventure. That is the naming origin behind Fiore's top guild, Fairy Tail. I've already mentioned that I've watched Fairy Tail in my top 5 Muso crossover ideas list, where at the time I was up to episode 57 in the middle of the Arashion Seis arc. And now at the time of recording this, I'm up to episode 170 in the middle of the Grand Magic Games. I don't plan on making a retrospective video on Fairy Tail just because the series is so long and I don't know how much I should cover if I did make one. Most of those videos have been around the same length as an episode of that series, so I kind of want to keep it that way. Apparently episodes 1 to 48 are classed as season 1, but I don't know if that's true. So what I initially planned was that I'd reveal that I've seen Fairy Tail in the Muso list, only because I already had the idea and I could kill two birds with one stone, and just leave it at that. But from watching all of those episodes, I really wanted to talk about it, so I changed my mind. However, this video will instead be a cross between a retrospective and a general impressions video. Plus, this is just based on what I've seen so far, cause I know I still have a lot more to get through. Although I dread to think how many squiggly lines there'll be in this Word document just because of the way Fairy Tail is spelt. The memories are a bit hazy, but I remember first hearing about Fairy Tail many years ago. I believe it was around 2013, but at that time, all I'd heard about was just Natsu and how he eats fire! It wasn't until sometime later that I first heard of the name Fairy Tail and had a very, very vague idea of the plot. I knew it was about wizards and that there's a tournament at one point. But that was it. I didn't learn much else until after I started watching. Then I think about a year later, I started coming across clips of the show on YouTube, which I watched out of both curiosity and because I had nothing else to do. Well, I got to see a bit of this pink-haired fire eater, this hot blonde chick, and a talking cat. However, many of these clips were Nalu compilations, since that seems to be what everybody cares about.
Lucy, when are you and Natsu finally gonna kiss each other? Say what? Give her a smooch, Natsu, right on the lip!
Then there was also when Natsu and Urza appeared in Death Battle. That's it. Though despite that, I kind of wanted to watch it. You can even see me say this in several older videos, since while it looked very weird to me, I also got the impression that it was fun. I also liked the fantasy setting, with it leaning more towards the fantasy that interests me, but most of all, what made me want to see Fairy Tail was word of mouth. I saw people everywhere saying, "Fairy Tail's amazing, I love Fairy Tail," so it was curiosity on top of my own interests. Yet this was at the time when most anime seemed impossible for me to watch, so I had this fatalistic attitude until after watching My Hero Academia. But at that time, I came across an article titled Top 10 Most Anticipated Anime of 2018, which included Fairy Tail's final season, and I remember it saying it had over 300 episodes, so it almost made me give up as I thought I'd never be able to catch up. I didn't learn until after starting it that it was almost 300 episodes, but I decided I would start watching during the summer break since I was off for 4 months and would have tons of free time. However, there was one problem with that plan. Frickin' Love Island was on. My sister watches the show and she was also on break at the time, and because my parents can't put up with it, she had to watch it in my room. This show was on every night for 6 weeks, and I feel really embarrassed about people seeing what I'm watching, as well as her turning up the volume to the point that I wouldn't be able to hear anything. So I had to put it off and even forgot about my plans long before Love Island finished. It wasn't until I was constantly playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to finish the game where I got bored going around the world for Zenobia's side quest, and my mind started to wander. I had recently uploaded my Nier Automata voice actors and other roles video that I made back in April, so I was thinking over that, hoping that I hadn't made any errors and being bothered by this technical glitch where I got cut off. As I was doing this, I remembered that one of the VAs I covered in that video was Jeremy Lee, Lucy's English voice actress. When remembering that, I thought, oh, I was supposed to start watching Fairy Tail. So shortly after finishing Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I finally watched the first episode of Fairy Tail and went on from there. Then I started watching JoJo several days later. I swear, these two shows will forever be paired in my mind now. However, before I even made my initial plans to start in the summer break, there was one issue. On Crunchyroll, they don't have the first series for some reason. And of course, when I want to start a show, I want to start from the very first episode. Plus, I don't have Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon Prime. That's the only reason why I use Crunchyroll despite the website's flaws. I tried using Funimation, but the videos would always crash for me. And because I don't like using websites like Kiss Anime, I had to resort to YouTube. I didn't like doing that, but I had little choice. Upon meeting this issue, I actually considered watching the series dubbed, because the vast majority of clips I'd seen beforehand were from the English dub, so I associated the few characters I knew with their English voices. Other than one word, I had never heard Natsu's Japanese voice at the time. I'm serious. Then I learned that the first 4 episodes of the dub are on Funimation's official YouTube channel, so I started with that because it didn't make me feel bad, and thus it reinstated that point. So yeah, I watched the series dubbed, which I know will piss off a lot of people because they think all dubs suck. When going into this, all I had to go off of was the clips I'd seen all those years ago, so I still knew very little, but I think that left me way more surprised by what I'd seen, although I had gotten spoiled on a couple of things as I was watching through. For example, Lizana still being alive. That was probably the biggest one. Of course though, I've got some main characters to give my impressions on. At first, Natsu seemed like the general standard for anime protagonists. Brash and hot-headed, no pun intended. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He has the typical love of fighting and being an idiot when it comes to anything else. But I think that Natsu is a really fun character. Mainly because a lot of the series' awesome action comes from him when he gets fired up due to all the destruction and over-the-top flashy Dragon Slayer magic that shows up in the process. With Natsu's stupidity and fighting obsession, it is especially present in him compared to like-minded characters. He always wants to fight somebody, even if it's the most inappropriate time, which leads to a lot of his comedic moments. But even then, Natsu does experience development, like when Guildarts teaches him about standing up to fear. And there are plenty of moments where he is mature and sensible, so he's not some one-note character. I always seem to struggle conveying my thoughts into words when it comes to the main character for some reason. Making up the other half of the Nalu ship, Lucy. I get the impression that a lot of people don't like Lucy. I remember seeing a video saying that Lucy was one of the worst female leads in all of anime. But for me, I feel Lucy gets a bit of an unnecessary bad rep. Lucy is the one who ends up on the receiving end of a lot of the other main characters' quirks and recklessness. So I guess she's kind of like Squidward, leading to a lot of freakouts and wacky antics. My only issue with Lucy doesn't have anything to do with her character, rather the writing. She loses her keys more times than Wendy trips, including the replays. I'm gonna end up sounding like a feminist, but it ends up becoming a repetitive and dumb way of depowering her. I mean, she has a whip! She also gets kidnapped a lot, which plays into that point. But what I like about Lucy's actual character is that on top of being kind towards her friends and spirits, she's a rich chick that kicks ass rather than being prim and proper. When she does get to fight, it's pretty cool because I really like the idea of celestial spirits, even if some of them are really weird. Okay, Cancer the Crab, or he's a hairdresser. Alright, Sagittarius the Centaur, or a dude in a horse costume. Also, this is apparently classed as a dog. There's a lot of weird things in this show, like some of the minor antagonists, including the Butt Jiggle Gang.
I could have been an engineer.
Speaking of weird, there's also Happy. Happy's the talking cat. I know it's really X-Seed, but saying cat is funnier. As I guessed, he's supposed to be the cute mascot character. What I also guessed was that he'd be very witty and a huge troublemaker. Happy is essentially the in-universe shipper because he constantly teases others, especially Lucy, on being in love. Ironic considering he loves Carla, who's pretty bitchy at first, but develops into becoming more considerate, and doesn't tell anybody about her damn visions. I guess I'm just used to talking cats at this point, so Happy didn't weird me out as much as I thought he would. And while he plays more of a support role, I do like seeing his interactions and teasing with the other characters. On to the remaining main characters, next is Grey Fullbuster. Sounds like a Mega Man attack. I actually really like Grey. Honestly, he's tied with Natsu for my absolute favorite character. Ironic because of the rivalry between the two. I just think he's, and again, no pun intended, cool. He was the character that I felt the earliest connection with due to his backstory being detailed first during the Galuna Island arc. I really like Gray's backstory with Leon and because I felt really bad for him to see that he lost his parents at a young age and then blamed himself for Ur's death, but it also showed him grow from being a bratty kid to a mature and cautious teenager. I did think that his recurring gag of taking his clothes off got old pretty quick, but later on they started to be more reserved with it and use it in funny scenarios, so my feelings towards it changed. I seem to have this weird thing of really liking characters with ice powers. However, I do really like the concept of ice make magic, allowing Gray to make all sorts of inanimate objects out of ice. He's also a little edgy, and I also seem to have a thing of really liking edgelords. Continuing on the serious note, the last character for the initial main group, Urza. Going into this, I had the impression that Urza was going to be incredibly serious all the time. For the most part, that's true. She's almost as much of a babysitter to the guild as Makarov. As I thought, she's incredibly strict and wrathful, which leads to a lot of funny moments of people being scared of her.
That's one simple-minded spirit.
Yeah, but I bet he's still smarter than Urza. What did you say? Nothing!
But she still has a caring nature. What surprised me about Urza is that she has a very childlike mindset at times, such as wanting to have a picnic, as well as being socially awkward, so it makes me like her a lot more than what I probably would if she was just super serious all the time, because it shows she's not exactly perfect personality-wise. Plus, again, I like the concept of her magic. Requip allows her to switch weapons and armors with varying effects, which is a field of magic I don't often see in fiction, so I also like it for originality. But there is still one more main character, since I briefly did Carla as well, Wendy. At the time I made the Muso list, I had only been recently introduced to Wendy, so I kind of failed to acknowledge her existence in that video. My impression of Wendy can be summed up like this. Wendy is adorable, she must be protected, her shyness and insecurity makes me feel sorry for her on many occasions, but she's the frickin' Sky Dragon Slayer, so she's highly capable. I feel awkward saying things like adorable because I'm a man! Now I sound like Elfman. There are hundreds of characters in this show, so I would be here forever if I did them all. So I'm just sticking with the main characters and those I really want to talk about. Regardless of the large cast size, almost all of them feel very unique, and this relates to one thing I particularly like about the series. In a similar vein to quirks in My Hero Academia, every character has a signature magic ability. On top of these being very creative, I think it makes even a lot of the minor characters stand out since everybody feels different to one another. Even characters that use the same magic on paper use them in different ways. Now, I don't have a segue for this, but after remembering that I planned to watch Fairy Tail when playing Xenoblade, I started seeing the entire internet saying that it is a terrible series and has always been terrible. Like, tons of videos and comments kept saying that, and it really bothered me. I've got nothing wrong with anybody disliking Fairy Tail, I was just so confused on where this massive hatred came from, considering that in the past, I saw the complete opposite. It even made me hesitant to start watching the show until I remembered, everybody hates me, so what's the point? I did some digging on why everybody was saying Fairy Tail is terrible and found 3 recurring arguments. The main one being, it's all about friendship. They always use the power of friendship to win. There are times where they talk about friends, which does come across as cheesy, and there were moments where I thought, did they really need to use the word friend?
How could you do that to him? He was your friend.
Couldn't you have said ally or comrade? But here's the thing. It's nowhere near as brought up as they make it out to be. It's more commonplace in the early episodes, but not by much. And it's so few and far between. The only recurring example is the friend lines, but they only happen roughly every 20 episodes. And when it's just a handful of lines, it's not gonna change my view of the entire show. This actually made me pretty cynical starting off, as every time the word friend was mentioned, I would subconsciously groan, thinking that it would be brought up constantly, but then I realized that it's so minimal. There was only one instance that I thought was really bad with this. It was at the end of the Tenro Island arc when Acnologia attacks. They do this super duper awesome looking team up attack, but it does nothing. So they decide to hold hands to combine their magic energy, and instead Mavis converts the power of their bonds into magic to cast Fairy Sphere to protect them from Acnologia's attack, and keep them in stasis for 7 years, which was a massive mindfuck for me.
I used what little energy magic power, your unwavering conviction and your love for one another, they're what brought forth this miracle.
Oh, fuck off.
The Dragon of the Apocalypse's plans were thwarted by the power of bonds and friendship. But that's only one instance in over 160 episodes. I feel like these people are doing their best commentator impression and absurdly over-exaggerating this issue. You know what else, though? For a show that's apparently just about the power of friendship, there are a lot more dark moments than friendship ones. Seriously, this show is dark at times. Like, really dark. If it was any darker, I wouldn't be able to see. I vaguely knew about the Tower of Heaven going in, where hundreds of people were imprisoned and forced to work as slaves, and even used the sacrifices to try and revive Zeref. Speaking of Zeref, when I was introduced to him, I saw how much of a tragic character he is presented to be, where he hates his existence as anything near him dies. He even says, "Why does this world reject me?" After seeing the actions of Grimoire Hearts, he believes that the world is irredeemable and wants to bring the apocalypse. That's another thing I really like about Fairy Tail's characters. A lot of the villains are very complex and extremely developed. Granted, there are a few one-note villains, but they get overshadowed by the others. The best example of that would be Jalal. Jalal is an amazingly written villain. He has this dynamic in history with him and Urza being friends while slaves in the Tower of Heaven, but then he gets corrupted by what's believed to be Zeref's ghost. It creates tension between the two as they were so close but are now enemies. But upon losing his memories, Jalal goes through a complete personality change. Initially, he wants to die after learning he did terrible things in the past, and is even horrified at the thought of regaining his memories.
I'm afraid.
Of what?
My memory of it returning.
Ultimately, he goes back to his original self, caring towards Urza and others, and after the 7-year time skip, he regains all his memories, but rather than becoming evil again, he chooses to atone for his sins by eradicating dark guilds. I've seen a number of villains who later regret their actions, but nothing like with Jalal. To see someone so horrified by what they did and to have development that makes comparing the two Jalals night and day shows how complex the writing is and makes Jalal feel human. He's not even the only villain like this. The next that comes to my mind is Loxus. When being introduced to Loxus, the first thing that I thought was, is that Patrick Seitz? But second was how much of an asshole he is, being incredibly selfish and rude towards the rest of the guild. When he tries to take over the guild by force in the Battle of Fairy Tail arc, I was hoping he would be expelled due to all the chaos he caused, and while he does, Loxus reflects on his actions and changes his ways to become much more magnanimous and loyal towards Fairy Tail and its members. In the Tenro Island arc, when he shows up to help in the fight against Hades, I got so excited. I was like, oh, you're so fucked now. I was glad when Loxus got brought back into the guild from seeing how much he changed, even though I really wanted him to get kicked out at first. He's also really frickin' strong, so there's that. One last major example of a villain I felt was very complex and had strong development from evil to good is Ultir. Learning that Ultir is Ur's presumed to be dead daughter shocked me, like, what the hell? She thought you were dead, but you decided to piss off? And I figured that she and Grey would have a confrontation at some point. Then finding out about her being the fake Zeref ghost that corrupted Jalal didn't exactly raise my opinion of her. When a confrontation with Grey finally comes and I learned her backstory, I was really pissed. Not because of the way it was written, but rather I was so angered by how these bastards separated her from Ura by experimenting on her and claiming she had died so that she ended up thinking that her mum abandoned and replaced her. But once she learns the truth of what happened, she regrets all the evil things she did and, again, changes her ways. Even when she was evil, she still had a good side to her by acting as a surrogate mother to Meredy. Despite being the one who caused the death of Meredy's family, she regrets that most of all, and even tries to kill herself to make up for it. But Meredy forgives her, and the two atone for their own sins by forming Crime Sorcier with Jalal to take down dark guilds. Jalal, Loxus, and Ultir were all characters that I had significant changes in opinion on from first meeting them to after their development. But they don't even compare to one particular character. The character who gave me the most dramatic change in views. Gajiel. Honestly, at first, I hated Gajiel. Like, really hated him from when he was an antagonist in the Phantom Lord arc, where he destroyed the original Fairy Tail Guild Hall, beat up Team Shadowgear, and when Lucy was held captive, he beat her up just for fun. When he actually joins Fairy Tail, I was shocked, but thought that he may get some sort of redemption. I got that, and so much more. To be a broken record, Gajiel's character development reminds me a lot of Jafar in Fire Emblem, where at first he does all these horrible things, but upon being placed on the right path, he becomes a much better person. He becomes far more selfless, and while he's initially a jerk after joining Fairy Tail, he later becomes incredibly loyal towards the guild for giving him a new purpose. Plus, Gajiel has a lot of funny moments which show him having a more compassionate side rather than just being cold.
Seriously? I mean, I'm a dragon slayer too. When do I get my flying kitty cat, huh?
Gajiel wanting his own kitty cat is one of my favorite running gags in the whole show from how much it contrasts with his personality. And the best part is that he actually does get one! With Panther Lily being the most badass Exceed of them all. So seeing Gajiel go through such profound character development, his funny moments, and the obvious shipping scenes between him and Levi bringing out the best parts about him, it made Gajiel one of my favorite characters in the series. I went from absolutely hating him to frickin' loving him. Now I sound like Levi. I know I've been bringing up funny moments a lot in this video. That's just because this series is chock full of them. For an anime that's not classed as a comedy, it sure feels like one a lot of the time. I won't go into the nitty-gritty since I've already given examples, but I even enjoy a lot of the filler episodes because I find them funny. For instance, as I included in the Muso list just cause I found this so funny, the Horizon bit. I was laughing throughout the episode's credits and hours afterwards because I lost it from how funny it was. Though a considerable amount of my laughter when watching this came from one specific character. Juvia. God, I love Juvia. She's another one of my favorites because almost every scene she's in makes me laugh. She loves Gray and has all of these hilarious fantasies and schemes on being with him. I mean, she's responsible for the Horizon bit. I generally don't like stalker characters, although I use that term loosely, but the way they do it with Juvia is just so funny due to all of her ridiculous reactions to anything that involves her beloved Gray. The fight between them when they first meet is like the funniest fight I have ever seen. I kept laughing throughout, and I had to watch it again after finishing the episode. The way her fantasies are presented in this over-the-top lovey-dovey manner makes me giggle, as well as considering any girl Gray's friendly with to be her rival. They also get to fit in some dirty jokes with her, which is my kind of humor.
Are you jealous he was inside of me and not you?
Not really.
It gets to the point that whenever I see Juvia in the next episode previews, I think, I'm going to enjoy this. And I always do. She never fails to make me laugh. However, while comedic nature is the main reason why she's one of my favorite characters, I also like Juvia on a serious note as well. I sympathize with her backstory of being isolated from others and having terrible experiences with love. Moreover, her voice actress is also Mineta. That's so perfect! Oh, and Leon is in love with Juvia. God damn it, Leon, you better not sink my ship. On the topic of love, I guess it's time to go over one of the other arguments I've seen people make when saying Fairy Tail sucks. That being, it's all about fan service. I've come across a number of fan service moments, and I know there's more to come. One of the Nalu compilations I saw years ago used the scene where Natsu and Lucy are trapped in a bell while the latter is naked as the transition. I know this is more of a subjective point, but fan service doesn't bother me. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a horny teenage boy. I mean, I've always seen fan service as just a random thing that happens on occasion and never make a big deal about it. The only reason why I'm focusing on it here is because so many others are. Almost every anime I've ever heard of has fan service moments in them. People don't make a big deal about them there, unless it's a hentai, and neither do I. So I find it hypocritical that Fairy Tail is being considered terrible because of that. Meanwhile, there's shows like High School DxD, which are essentially fan service the animation, but they never get criticized for that. Also, I'm assuming that they're only complaining about fan service on female characters, since it's what I always see, in which I have to say, what if the main male character constantly takes his clothes off? And for the last of the three arguments I see these people bring up, which I can also use as a segue to end off this video, is that apparently the ending of the manga sucked. Now I don't know what happens at the end, as I haven't read the manga, and have been avoiding spoilers like the plague ever since starting. I know it must be disappointing to end on a lame note, but I don't think that should be used to say the entire series is bad. My belief when it comes to the ending ruined it criticisms is that unless the ending doesn't resolve anything or makes you view the rest of the material differently, for example, if at the end it's revealed that Natsu is actually evil and everything he did before was part of his master plan, which I highly doubt is what happens, then it shouldn't be considered bad just for that reason. I have an analogy for this type of thing, being like drinking hot chocolate. You start it off, and it's really hot since it's new to you, but as it cools down and you gradually drink it, you get more used to it. Then you reach the end where all the dark, pasty stuff at the bottom comes up and it tastes horrible. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but it doesn't remove the fact that the rest of the hot chocolate was delicious. Honestly, I think my biggest issue with Fairy Tail is that I didn't start watching it sooner. I wish I got to experience these moments across years like many other fans have, rather than over a couple of months, because I feel I'll miss out on a lot of the emotional impact of the ending. When seeing the first few episodes and arcs, I thought, it's good, but just good. Although that was partially influenced by my cynical attitude from all the "it's about the power of friendship" claims. Then as I got more into the swing of things and got to see how complex the writing and character development is, it's not good. It's great. It's not perfect, but everything that I like about Fairy Tail greatly makes up for the little gripes I have here and there, like them sometimes pulling shit out of their ass. The action is awesome, almost being like Dragon Ball at times. The characters are really fun and well written. The writing helps make a lot of the story arcs feel epic, and just all these emotions it's given me on this journey. Across watching, there have been many instances where I've smiled, laughed, freaked out, and almost cried. Yeah, I don't really cry at fictional stuff, but Fairy Tail has gotten me so close on so many occasions. What has it done to me? The fact that I still have a lot more to see both excites me and makes me feel nervous for reasons I'll explain later. I haven't gotten to when they changed the art style to apparently look more like the manga, and there are several things I knew beforehand that I haven't reached either. There's also the movies, but they're a bit tricky. Of course, I really want to see the movies, but while I'm guessing they aren't canon, I imagine you'd still need to watch far enough for background context. Plus, I noticed that the movies for shows Funimation dubs only get released in Japan and America, so I'll have to use more illegitimate means. That's the only reason why I haven't seen My Hero Academia 2 Heroes. And now that the final season has started, including the dub, I'm confident that will end long before I even get that far. Which is a shame, both because I know it will be all over soon, and because I was hoping I could experience the end with everybody else, but I'll probably miss out. Regardless, I'm still stoked to watch more. Now to do that pointing thing.